Last time I talked about the famous feedback sandwich, which I'm clearly not a big fan of. I think the feedback sandwich is not honest and it's also not effective. But what should we do if we want to provide constructive feedback to someone? I think our feedback has to be direct and humane. So, what are the most critical steps? Step number one, we need to signal our good intention to the other. Evolution wired us to check for intention first in a relationship, in a connection. And if we detect that the intention of the other is bad, then we get defensive, we resist, and we might not even listen to the criticism. So how do we signal to the other person that we have goodwill towards them? One way is to give them feedback regularly, not just once a year, but constantly, and also very important, not only constructive feedback, not only negative feedback, but also positive one. Research shows that the ratio of negative feedback to positive ones in a good relationship is 1:5, meaning that for every negative feedback, we need to provide 5 positive ones to keep the relationship in a good state. So it's something to think about in your relationship, whether at work or home. Do you have that 1:5 ratio? Within a specific conversation, a way to signal good intention to the other is to put ourselves into their shoes, to prove to them that we understand their world, to prove to them that we see them. We can imagine what it's like to be in their position. So, for example, we can say something like that. I know that you've had a lot of work lately, and I also know that you prefer to work alone, and it's not easy for you to ask for help from others, right? So that's one way to show the other person that we are not giving this criticism just to criticize them and just for our sake and just to attack them, but we have good intentions. And if we do this first critical step, then they might open up and they listen to us. It's so critical, this first step. Without this, we're just basically speaking to the wall. The person is not listening, the person is defensive, so our criticism is not very likely to be very productive. So what's the second step? The second step is give concrete observation to the person. So talk about the concrete behavior that you want to put into question here. For example, you had 2 deadlines in the past month and you missed both. In the first case, you missed the deadline by 2 days, and in the second case, you missed the deadline by 3 days. So you describe what happened without judging the person, without labeling the person, without evaluating the situation. And it's extremely hard, especially if we are so convinced that we are right and the other person needs to change. But we need to keep that concrete observation without labeling, without evaluation. And the third critical step is we need to tell the person the impact of this behavior. For example, you know that because we talked about it a lot, that we are so interconnected, we rely on each other. So if one of us is late, then that makes the other team members also late, and the whole project can be delayed. Again, no labeling. You don't tell the person you're always just irresponsible, we cannot rely on you ever. You describe the impact either on the organization, on other team members, or on yourself. And finally, there are 2 more steps which I'm not gonna pay a lot of attention to. One of that is listen to the other person. Find out the root causes. Give them a chance to talk about, their feelings, why they think that behavior is happening. And the final step is plan the way forward together, or you can even make a request for a specific action.